Here I go, here I go, here I go. Yeah, here I go, here I go.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Take Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Burles, and of course, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the NCAA Women's and Men's Tournament and which one is more exciting. And then also, NBA playoffs are about 3 weeks away. So do not miss out on any of this content that I'm about to deliver to you guys. First of all, we're going to start out with a quote that Caitlin Clark said. She said that the NCAA Women's Tournament is more exciting than the men's this year. And we'll also play the soundbite of her saying that.
People are more excited about the women's side than the men's side, and I think that's obviously something that's really never been the case before, and it's cool to see how it's evolved. Like, when I first started this when I was a freshman, like, we couldn't even use the March Madness branding, and now to see this, and really it's just taken a whole nother level, and I expect it to continue to grow this year, and I think that's the coolest thing for myself.
But let's get into that statement. We all know Caitlin Clark is the biggest star in college basketball. There's no debate about that. That is why the women's tournament is more intriguing than the men's tournament this year. If you go to the men's side of the tournament, how many stars can you name? Not many. The only one people may be able to name is Zach Edey. And he's not even a first-round talent in the NBA. So when you look at Caitlin Clark, she's averaging 31 points per game. She's been pulling from NBA range and Steph Curry range. She's been the Steph Curry of women's basketball. She's electric. She's so fun to watch. And I buy that statement because, look, the women's tournament this year has been electric. The first game for Iowa was against Holy Cross, a 16 seed. 2.5 million people tuned in to watch that game. And then the next game, they broke that record, 3.23 million viewers for that game. The men's tournament ratings have been going down. Last year, they had a record low for a championship game between San Diego State and UConn. Last year's women's national title game between LSU and Iowa, which everyone's hoping and praying that's an Elite Eight rematch, because I want to see that. I do. We'll get into that game in just a second. But the women's tournament ratings have been going up. Last year, around 6 million people watched the NCAA Women's Championship last year, which is the highest it's ever been. But for the men's side, they still have more ratings, but it's the lowest it's ever been. So just look at it from that perspective. The women's game is growing. These girls may not be able to dunk or jump out of the gym, but they're pulling from three-point range, which is what basketball is. It's a three-point contest. You start from the perimeter and work your way in. And all these girls can shoot. I was watching Juju Watkins out of USC. Oh my God. She's insane. She is insane. Her game is so effortless. She's dropping buckets. Like, I've never really been a women's college basketball person, but this year I have gotten so involved. I've been watching it constantly. And when Caitlin Clark was chasing Pistol Pete Maravich's record, I turned the TV on. I was like, okay, I want to see this girl make history. And she did it in Steph Curry fashion. She pulled from the logo in that game. Fadeaway threes. I mean, it's insane. And the women's tournament is setting record attendances for the third year in a row. Third year in a row. Iowa sold out their first two games. Around 61,000 showed up for both games. 61,000 seats filled for one game for women's basketball. That is great for the sport. That is great. And when we get into NIL, people say NIL is the reason why women's basketball has been growing as much as it has, which I agree. It's giving these girls an ability to make a name for themselves and get publicity. Because the men's game historically has gotten more publicity than the women's. From a fan perspective, I've never seen the women's game get as much national attention as it has this year. It's been great. It has been great. And it's for a good reason. The reason is the women's game has more stars than the men's game. They just do. In the men's game, most of the great players that are going to the NBA are overseas. They're not even playing college basketball. But for the women's side, most of this WNBA players are coming from college. That's why it's been growing so big. And that's why it's been getting so much attention. Because when you have historical significance on the line, like an NCAA scoring record, which has been there for decades. Maravich didn't even have the three-point line. That's how long he's had that record for. Just to put that in perspective. And Caitlin Clark shatters it. That's impressive. That's impressive. She's the biggest star in college basketball, and she's not even on the men's side. The men's side just doesn't have stars. They don't. There's not many. And I may know them. Like Kyle Filipowski, Mark Sears, RJ Davis. But it becomes harder and harder to name those players because they're not in the spotlight. And no one, I don't know where it changed for college basketball, but the NIL is hurting the men's game. It is hurting the men's game. The transfer portal, players are constantly moving, and then players are going overseas or the G League. The best players are not always going to college basketball. Like the last time I can really sit here and tell you that there was a big star in college basketball was Zion Williamson, was John Morant. And that was a while ago. That was pre-COVID. And the best players in college basketball don't even make it far in the tournament. The transfer portal has changed the game for all college sports, of course, which is why we're going to get into the LSU and Iowa game that could potentially happen this weekend. Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark, if that game happens in the Elite Eight, that'll be the biggest women's college basketball game of all time. And it's not even a national championship. You got the two biggest names in college basketball. Angel Reese, who was talking all that smack to Caitlin Clark last year, being like, oh, look at this ring on my finger. Caitlin Clark said, all right, I'm back. And these college players are staying in college on the women's side. The men's game has a lot of guys who don't stay that long. They want to go straight to the NBA as quick as possible. But the women's game, you can actually build a program. And we'll get into John Calipari in Kentucky in a little bit because they did lose in the first round. And they're a big reason why the one-and-done method, they are the reason why the one-and-done method is a thing. But is that dying out? We'll get into that in a little bit. But Iowa LSU will be the biggest game in college basketball history in the Elite Eight. And I want to see that game. As a basketball fan, that is what I want to see. And the women's game, I'm so happy. I'm so happy it's getting the recognition it deserves. Everyone wants to crap on the women's game. Why? The fundamentals and skill really show in the women's game. Because it's not overshadowed by athleticism. It's not. I love basketball, just in general. Doesn't matter who's playing. So if you don't like women's basketball and you think it's not as good as the men's tournament this year, you're just crazy. You're just delusional. But let's move on to the men's side. John Calipari, like I was talking about. Kentucky lost in the first round to another double-digit seed in the last 2 years. Kentucky has made the tournament the last 3 years. And the two of the last 3 years, they have not made it out of the first round. 2022, they lost to 15 seed St. Peter's. And then this year, they lost to 14 seed Oakland. They let this guy drop 10 threes on their head. No one heard of Jack Golicki before he dropped 10 threes. 10. And he passed Steph Curry in 2 games with more threes in an NCAA tournament. That is absolutely remarkable. Remarkable. He hit 10 threes against Kentucky, which I don't know what you're supposed to do there if you're Kentucky, because you got the hot hand. You've got the hot hand, and you can't really guard a hot hand like that. It's impossible. 10 of 20 from the three-point line on Kentucky. Kentucky had 10 threes dropped on them by one player. And tell me why. Tell me why. DJ Wagner, a 5-star recruit, the number 1 player in the country, has 0 points. 0. I mean, is that really Calipari's fault? I think he's still a good coach. I don't think he should be fired from Kentucky. You don't get to the NCAA tournament 3 years in a row losing. It doesn't happen. It does not happen. But does his method of the one and done, getting these young players in and out, is it an effective method? It is when you've got players like John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Anthony Davis, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. When you have players like that, it is effective. But Kentucky has not had a team since 2012, when Anthony Davis was there, that had that much young talent and took them to the title game. They haven't had that. They have not had that. Maybe the last team was Julius Randle. But Julius Randle wasn't even a one-and-done guy. He was a junior when he came out and went to the draft. So, I mean, that doesn't really count. If you're talking about freshmen leading a team to the national title, it doesn't happen often anymore. Because the transfer portal. Guys stay in college basketball, but the good players always leave, or they don't stay long, or they don't even go to college at all. I was saying that earlier. This year, Kentucky has 4 projected draft picks. 4. And they don't beat Oakland? A 14 seed? I don't know. I don't know what's going on in Kentucky. I mean, Calipari is 71-30 in his last 3 years. Good record. Good record. I think he just tries to buy into one player too much, which is not bad. He has faith in his players. I get it. But he said it stung him for the players, that loss. And I don't blame him. I really don't blame him. I really don't blame him. Because college basketball, especially March Madness, there's no tournament like it in the world. One game. It's not a best of 7. It's not a best of 5. The best team doesn't always win. And Kentucky had the potential to be a Final Four team with the amount of talent they had. Reed Shepherd, he's projected to be a top 5 pick. He is a cold point guard. You're telling me with that amount of talent they have, they don't go anywhere? It's crazy. It's crazy. They've been letting me down. That's why I don't pick Kentucky in the tournament anymore. That's why I don't pick them. Simple as that. But let's move on to the NBA. A different topic. Who is the face of the league? It's looking like it's going to trend towards Anthony Edwards or Victor Wembanyama. Now, I know Victor Wembanyama is a rookie, and he hasn't really proven himself yet, but he's coming into the NBA already revolutionizing the game. A 7'5" center, leading the league in blocks already as a rookie. He is going to make an impact. He was the most hyped number 1 pick since LeBron James. No one has seen a player at his height be able to shoot, handle the basketball, guard 1 through 5. Victor Wembanyama can guard any position on the floor. You can put him anywhere, and he can guard. And he's not even in his prime. He's just a rookie. He's just a rookie. And I know his team's trash, but this guy's standing next to Adam Silver when they're kind of unveiling this AI, game. He's on stage with Adam Silver. Why? It's because he's the face of the league. The NBA wants Victor Wembanyama to be the face of the league. Now, he may not be in positions to prove that, but he is on his way. When the Spurs get more talent around this guy, it's over. And when Victor Wembanyama gains muscle, it's over. He is the future of the league. Now, Anthony Edwards right now, I think he's the most electrifying player in the NBA. So right now, I'll say he's the face, but you could honestly say it's a lot of different people. You could say it's Jokic. You could say it's Luka. You could say it's Giannis. Not one player has really set out to be the face yet. I think the NBA doesn't have a face. I think it has multiple faces. But I think Victor Wembanyama is the guy to pick up the torch when LeBron retires and carry it high. I think he's the guy, and I think he's the future and the face of the league. This guy will win multiple championships when he's in his prime. He will be unstoppable. Unstoppable. Victor Wembanyama is a rookie, and he's already averaging 20 and 10 and 3.5 blocks a game. He's already dominant. He's already dominant. He's dropping 30 on some of the best players in the league. Victor Wembanyama is him. He's not in a playoff position, but he's him. Now, speaking of playoffs, the Rockets are a game back behind the Warriors. The Rockets are the hottest team in the NBA right now. As I'm recording this, they're on a 9-game winning streak. And tonight against Oklahoma City Thunder, they could go for 10. I think they can go for 10. I think they can beat the Thunder tonight. They have that opportunity. Jalen Green has been balling out. His last 5 games, man's been averaging 30 points a game. He's been dogging. He's been dogging. And you got Fred VanVleet. They have so much young talent. So much young talent. Dylan Brooks, I know people hate Dylan Brooks, but he's still a decent player for what they're trying to do. And then they have an experienced coach. Ime Udoka has been to the finals. He knows what it takes to win. That is exactly what this young Rockets team needs. They need that. And I think they can jump the Warriors. Now, the Warriors, painfully so, beat my Miami Heat last night by a wide margin. But we had no Jimmy Butler, no Tyler Hero. But I'm not using excuses for Heat. But the Warriors, they're playing better. But if the Warriors don't make the playoffs, should they move on from their core that their dynasty originated from? That's a question you have to ask yourself. Steph Curry, he is 36 years of age. Draymond Green, he's 34. Klay Thompson, he's 34 with an Achilles and torn ACL in his career. You have to ask yourself this question, Warriors Nation. Are you good enough to win right now, or should you move on from these guys? It's hard to ask Steph Curry to stay here and rebuild. It is. But do the Warriors have what it takes? Are they too old? Do they have enough pieces? I don't think they do. They've struggled. They've been up and down all year long. And when you get rid of guys like Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, that clears cap space. I'm not saying trade Steph Curry, but if you move on from Draymond and Klay Thompson, you can get other guys around Steph Curry because he is getting towards the end. He is a shooter, so his prime will last a lot longer. but he is getting to the end of his career. He's 36, which is crazy to say Steph Curry is 36, because I grew up watching him. It doesn't feel like that long ago when Steph Curry was coming up on the scene in 2015. But that was 9 years ago. 9. And now the Warriors are 10th place in the West, 1 game above the Rockets, and they play the Rockets next week. That's going to be a huge game. Massive. Massive. They're going to be battling. The Warriors and Rockets are going to be battling the next couple weeks for that final play-in spot. Because when you look at the Warriors' next 5 games, they play the Magic, Hornets, Spurs, Mavericks, and then the Rockets. So 2 out of 3 of those games are wins. Hornets, Spurs. For the Rockets, you got the Thunder tonight. That's a tough game. Jazz, I think they can win. Mavericks, that's a tough game. Luka and Kyrie have been balling out. Timberwolves, not going to win that. And then you got the Warriors. So the Warriors and Rockets have a tough 5-game stretch ahead of them. And the Rockets have been hot recently. They have been winning. They turned this thing around. I didn't think the Rockets were even going to be in contention to be in the play-in. But when you got Jalen Green dunking on dudes like that, he did against Portland the other night. I mean, you're gonna be in the discussion. Now let's move on to another team who's a little bit more established. The second-seeded Milwaukee Bucks. They are playing better. I will say that. But you got Doc Rivers as your head coach. Look at Doc Rivers. He's 111 and 104 in the playoffs. And with the amount of talent this guy's had throughout his career, with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo, the Celtics, he only won 1 championship throughout his tenure there. And then after that, he goes to the Clippers with Lob City, with Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, Jamal Crawford, DeAndre Jordan, J.J. Redick. He had talent. The Clippers definitely underperformed. They should have won at least 1 championship. You know what's crazy? He didn't even make the conference finals with that team. Once. His entire coaching tenure with the Clippers, he didn't make the conference finals. And then let's not even get into him having Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. This man has had talent stacked up to the mountaintop in only 1 NBA championship. 1. Hasn't made a conference finals since he was coaching the Celtics in 2012. That was when LeBron was on the Heat. That's how long it has been for Doc Rivers. I don't think Doc Rivers is the answer. I still don't know why they fired Adrian Griffin middle of the season. They were in the exact same spot. What is Doc Rivers going to do? Manage personalities better? He's not going to win you games. I'll tell you that right now. I don't have faith in the Bucks. I don't. I think they're very beatable. You can shut down Giannis. He can't shoot. Dame, when was the last time we saw him in a playoff situation? How is he going to perform? Chris Middleton, he has been banged up all year long. All year long. And I think not having Drew Holiday is huge for the Bucks. Their defense lacks. Do not put Dame on an island because he's going to get exposed in the playoffs. He will. And Doc Rivers knows how to choke. He was the coach of the Sixers last year. You guys remember. The Celtics were down 3-2 to his Sixers. They couldn't win that series. He didn't make it to the conference finals once when he was on the Sixers. 1 time. That tells me everything you need to know about Doc Rivers. The Bucks are not a threat. If they prove me wrong, so be it. But right now, I don't have faith, and you shouldn't either. Now let's get into a couple of other things NBA related. The The Boston Celtics blew a 30-point lead to the Atlanta Hawks the other night. I don't care if they didn't have Derek White or Drew Holiday. First of all, it happened on my birthday, so thank you. Thank you very much, Celtics, for losing that game. Thank you to the Boston Celtics for giving me a birthday present. They were up 30, and the Hawks didn't even have Trae Young. They didn't even have Trae Young. That is... I don't want to overreact to win-loss. But I think you got to at least look at that and be like, okay, the Celtics last year in the first round had the Hawks take them to 6 games. You're telling me that's not a pattern to what is about to happen again in the playoffs. Jason Tatum isn't able to hit shots in crunch time. He can't do it. He cannot do it. Jaylen Brown has been better down the stretch from games I've watched this season than Jason Tatum. He is more confident with his shot. Jaylen Brown, he may not be living up to $285 million, that ginormous bag he got, but he's performing. He's performing. Now, I know in the playoffs he's a turnover machine. I'm waiting for that. But the Celtics obviously have the most talent. But can they overcome their lack of execution in the crunch time and being able to hold a lead? When you're up 30, you should not lose a game to the Hawks, who were barely in the play-in. Barely. I think that's unacceptable. People who think the Celtics are going to beat the Nuggets, that's not going to happen. Not going to happen. I think the Nuggets are the best team in the NBA and are going to run it back until any other team proves me otherwise. I think the teams that have the best chance to beat the Nuggets this year are the Clippers and the Celtics. That's it. Maybe I'll throw the Lakers in there because credit to the Lakers. They've been playing really well. They beat the Milwaukee Bucks last night. AD had 34 and 23 rebounds. Austin Reeves was balling. Bro had a triple-double. He had a triple-double. Without LeBron, they beat the Bucks. Again, kind of circling around to Doc Rivers. Can't beat the Lakers? Lakers match up well with the Celtics. Or not the Celtics, excuse me. The Nuggets. The Lakers are turning it around. They're turning it on at the last minute. As they always do, but last year they did the same thing and made the conference finals. I think the Lakers can make the conference finals. They just have to be consistent. Anthony Davis has to keep balling out like that, or they're not going to win. Simple. LeBron James, I think if he doesn't win a ring this year, I think LeBron could be on his farewell tour next season. I think he's beat up. He's got a lot of miles on those legs. He's still going to go down as one of the greatest players to ever touch a basketball. But I think he's about done. It just seems that way. He's got a lot of nagging injuries for a 39-year-old LeBron James. And he's still playing at a high level. 40% from three-point line. 25 points a game. He's been balling. He's doing a lot. And Anthony Davis is starting to carry the load a little bit more, which I'm worried about him in the playoffs as well. Can he stay healthy? He's had some nagging injuries as recent. He was icing his knees. He had leg warmers on. I don't know if it's just to keep him loose and keep him from avoiding injury, but we all know Anthony Davis has done a very good job at staying healthy this year, and I don't want to see that streak be broken in the playoffs. I don't want to see it because if Anthony Davis gets hurt in the playoffs, the Lakers are in trouble. They're done because they got no one else to guard a guy like Jokic. No one else. No one else. Now, Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood, they can, but they're not going to be able to put up the amount of offense they need. They're not going to. The NBA playoffs, man, they're coming. So don't don't go away. There's going to be predictions in a couple weeks for my bracket when it kind of gets all finalized and everything. The Nuggets are the number 1 seed right now. The Thunder are still trying to chase them. March Madness starts back up tomorrow or today as I'm recording this and I posted this. So UConn, I got them going all the way. They're playing San Diego State, a rematch of the national championship last year. I think that's going to be a good game. I know UConn has been smacking teams. They've been smacking teams by like 30, 40 points in the first 2 games. But I think this one's going to be a little bit closer for them because San Diego State, they got that experience. They were in the Final Four in the championship last year. There's a lot of good games in March Madness coming up. A lot of good games. And the women's tournament is going to be electrifying. But thank you guys very much for listening to today's episode of the Take Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up. And also hit the notification bell and subscribe so you do not miss out on any more podcasts. But I'm your host, Jackson Burleson, and peace out.
Talk to me, baby. Talk to me nice. I'm from another world, baby, yeah. Broadway paradise. They think I'm way too cold, cause I put my heart